there, welcome to my channel. My name is Doug. Thank you for joining me on yet another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. I was just going through some of the parts kind of Parker Vacumatics that I have to see whether there was something that I might be able to put together into one pen. I keep my vintage Vacumatics in this case, and I have this old broken Parker Vacumatic Junior in Azure Blue Pearl, which I tried to resurrect, but it was just so badly decomposed that all the celluloid just shattered. So this is going to be a parts pen, very interesting short clip, and a working Parker Vac pump that I can use in a future pen. And here's one that donated its end finial and nib, I think, but that's a nice cap if I get another jewel for that cap. And this has a working pump in it as well, but no nib. And then I came across this one. This one donated its cap ring on a previous resurrection. This beautiful golden pearl, which is still for sale. You can see that on my Wix page, which is linked in the description below. Beautiful golden pearl with an exquisite extra fine 14 karat gold nib. And it was missing a cap band. It got a donation from this pen here. So that leaves this as a pen that has no nib, has a really nice transparent barrel, and a double jewel. So that's a possibility. All it needs is a nib and another cap band. And then there's this one. This is a Canadian-made Vacumatic, and it says 1944 on it. It's got two cap bands and almost the same, pretty much the same clip as this one. So I thought about switching caps and doing that. And this nib was in pretty rough shape on this Canadian-made one. And you can see the date code on there. It says 52, Canada .52 . So that's the second quarter of 1952. Parker Canada kept making Vacumatics well into the 50s. But the barrel on this is a made in Canada 1944. So maybe it's a replacement nib, I'm not sure. But I'm thinking, okay, well, let's see if I can Franken-pen this. Let's take these two pens and make one double jewel fountain pen with a US-made body and a Canadian-made cap and nib. Today's episode is going to be FrankenVac.
Oof. He's going to be very popular.
I've just coined that. Trademark pending. So let's take these two pens out and see what we need to do to switch things up. Now, I need to keep track of all this because these parts are pretty much interchangeable, but I want to make sure that I'm keeping track of which is which. This is the American-made cap that donated the cap band. That's going to go on the Canadian pen, and here is the Canadian cap. Goes on the American pen. There we go. And then we have the Canadian nib, feed, section, and breather tube. That'll go on the American pen. So we can put the Canadian now with American cap away and take the section off of this one. And that'll go back over here and put this one in the American. So that's the Canadian section. Oh, that's not going to fit. Okay, so I think what I'm going to have to do is take the American section and leave it with the American pen. Take that nib and feed out and leave that with the American pen. There's nothing wrong with that section. It's in perfect shape. And knock this nib and feed out of this one and just swap nibs and put that nib and feed together. Does that look correct? And it looks a bit long. Maybe we can use this feed. I'm starting to lose track of this stuff. If I line this one up correctly, like that, that should work. And that should go in to that section. So we got the American barrel, the American section, the Canadian nib and feed, and breather tube. Yeah, that should work. Let's put this back in here and put this back in the Canadian one for future parts. Put that aside. So now I have the Canadian barrel, the Canadian nib, Canadian feed and breather tube, American section, American barrel, and double jewel, which is what I wanted. Let's get this pump out and see what condition that pump is in. I've had these on and off, so they've already been heated off a few times and should come apart. I'm just going to take this out of here so we don't damage it. Keep things safe here. Oh, that breather tube needs to go back. See what happens when you start swapping parts around? You got to keep track of everything. Always good to have a video record here. I can go back and review my video, see what the hell I just did. So I'll put that back. This is now the Canadian one with the American cap. There we go. Okay, so let's take this off. And let's see what condition the pump is in. It's actually pretty good. Just for my records, keep this pump here. Let's open up the Canadian one too and see what condition that pump is in, because it might be a donor in the future. If I have one that's broken, see if I can get it off here. That's what she said.
What about that's what she said? Can we at least do that?
Hush!
There we go. Now, this has been off recently. Man, that was broken.
Lobo, you're to rough with my patience.
Okay, so I've got a replacement ebonite receptacle for that. So that's repairable right there. But I'm going to keep it in the pen so I don't lose track of the blind cap. There we go, put the blind cap back on. And so that no nib Canadian American pen can go back in storage for future use. So now, pull these parts apart. All of these parts will go into the ultrasonic bath of pen flush, which is 9 parts distilled water and 1 part ammonia, and clean them up as best we can. The cap as well. Lots of old ink inside there. And let's just take a look at our barrel, which is going to be the new Frankenpen.
Dr. Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
It has a date code on it of, let's get closer here, made in USA, and there's a 0, no dots and a 0. So that's 1940. This is a very early version of the 3rd generation. Lots of cap wear. There's actually a ridge I can feel there. Some abrasions. Yeah, scratches. This is going to need a little bit of work. I'd say a lot of work to make it come up nice. Lots of abrasions and scratches. No cracks. And it looks like all of, well, I'm going to clean that out with some test tube cleaning brushes as well. That barrel. And it should end up being fairly clean. There's some remnants, debris inside there. Needs to be cleaned out. And the cap has 2 gold bands. One's discolored differently than the other, but when we polish this up, that's going to turn nicely shiny gold. Now, I've tried to take this end finial off of here, but the clip won't budge. I don't want to do any more damage to this pen. It's already coming back from dead parts. This really is a FrankenVac. It's coming back from dead parts. So I'm just going to polish that clip and end finial and everything with it installed on the cap and polished as best I can. All the abrasions out of that cap with micro mesh and sandpaper and so forth. But first, everything goes into the bath, and then we'll inspect that nib and see how we can clean it up. So the breather tube is celluloid, that amber colored celluloid, and it was all caked up with ink. So I've taken a guitar string and a little bit of water and just scraping the inside of it. Take all the remnants.
Help me in with this. Help me in with this. Help me in with this.
Think of your secretary.
That's a very good suggestion.
Of old ink out of it. I even used a real sharp point hypodermic to run water through it as well. And it's not too bad. Pretty good. And here are all my parts out of the pen flush bath. And that barrel's looking a little bit cleaner, but I'm going to have to go at it with my test tube cleaning brush. And there's that feed it'll need to be polished up. I'm just going to keep them together here, the breather tube and the feed, getting most of the old ink out of that section. Again, this is ebonite. Ebonite doesn't like water, so restrict the amount of time it's in the pen flush to just a couple of minutes. And the blind cap with that beautiful jewel that will get polished up, and that pump still has the pellet from the old diaphragm in it. I'll have to drill that out, but other than that, it's in really good shape. And there's that celluloid plunger, which is the same celluloid as the breather tube, that yellow amber color. And here's our nib. Now, not only is it old and corroded with ink, top side and bottom side, starting to look a little cleaner, but it is gnarly.
Oh, gnarly!
It has quite a bend in it. See if I can get a good shot of that. That side looks like it's okay, but you flip it over and that's been given a knock. So that's got quite a wow in it, bent down. So I'm going to have to repair that. But I'm going to polish this up first, get all of that old ink off it and polish it up to its original luster. Let's put it over here so you can see it against what it should look like when it's polished up on this side. Give it a flip. And there we go. And there we have the polished up nib. You can clearly see the .52 dot, Parker Canada, Reg TM. And let's turn it over. And see the underside is nice and clean as well. My fingers, not so much. Now comes the scary part, because that nib needs to be adjusted because it is bent, as you can see. So I'm going to use my nib pliers, which are from the pen tooling, and I'm going to tease the tine until it's true. So we're going to do the TTT on it. Tease the tine true. Stay true. The scary part about this is that this is a 1952 nib, so that makes it about 73 years old. And like many 73-year-olds, it gets brittle, and that tipping material might just pop right off of there. I've had that happen before. So I'm going to be very gentle with it, and if it pops off, this becomes a stub. So there's some way to salvage this nib anyway. And before I perform surgery on this nib, I'm going to take some microscopic pictures of it and see what the before and after might be. Well, I think we have some success. That wow is now gone, and the nib is aligned. I used a combination of my nib pliers and my nib block. I basically just put the nib down on the nib block and pressed on it with my fingernail. I tried using my spudger a little bit, but soft material like your fingernail will work. I got the little bump out of the one tine by doing that, and then the whole thing was sort of curved down. So I just took my nib pliers very gently and just prized them up a little bit, just a little bit at a time. Too much torque and that nib material weld might break. But it looks very good. I'm very proud of myself right now. I don't want to get too proud because things can go south in a hurry with these things. So it looks like it's in pretty good shape to be able to at least reinstall in the pen and give it a dip test to see what more adjustment it might need. So now I got to get that pellet out of that ebonite vacuum pump diaphragm receptacle. And there's a little bit of sack left in there. So I'm going to use my very tiny drill bit on my Dremel tool, line it up very carefully, and drill it out. I need my eyes for this. I've drilled a hole through the center of that pellet, which is a celluloid ball, I think. It's made of celluloid. And I get out my dental pick and try to hook the rest of it out. without damaging that ebonite receptacle. There we go. That one came out easy. I've spent hours with some of these. Sometimes you have to just grind them to dust before they'll come out. And it looks like the receptacle's in good shape. A couple of nicks, one right there, but that should accept a new diaphragm really easily. And let's do that right now. Okay, let's re-diaphragm this pump. I got my standard diaphragms from 15 pens. Get one of those out. We got our pellet pusher from the Inky Nib, and we're going to trim it back to that little guide mark that Scott has put on this pellet pusher. Very useful little tool right here. You don't have to measure anything. I'm going to trim off a little bit first. Yeah, a little bit more. Just so we get down, there we go. So I can get down to the point where I can mark it. Just feel that little groove through there, right there. Mark it with my fingernail. And then cut it a bit with my X-Acto blade and just trim it clean. And we're right there on that mark. Perfect. So now we're going to put a little bit of talc on this latex so it'll fold back on itself. And then we give the pellet a push into the receptacle and hope it makes a satisfying click and not an explosive crack. Click. Yay.
In the frozen land of Nador, they were forced to eat Robin's minstrels. And there was much rejoicing.
Now we peel it back on itself. This part takes either a minute or a half an hour, depending on how it's feeling today. A lot of voodoo involved here. Let's see if we can get it going. Yeah, so far so good. So sometimes when it gets down to here, I double it back on itself. It's just so I can get this edge up onto that aluminum shelf right there. And then I learned this trick because it happened by accident a couple of times. Get that part right there on that aluminum shelf and then hold on to it and see whether you can push it back out again so it'll unpop. There we go. Hey, that worked. I think I'm going to patent that technique. Someone's probably already learned that technique, and I just learned it by experience, I'm sure. But that's now working perfectly. That's the way it should look. If you want to see how a Parker Vacumatic pump works, click right up here. There's a video I did that uses a Parker 51 demonstrator Vacumatic that I borrowed from Murray and shows how it works by filling the pen with water, and you can see it through the transparent demonstrator on how it fills up a pen. But now we can install that in our barrel. Now here's the barrel. I have cleaned it with a test tube cleaner, and it's nice and pristine and transparent and translucent. Isn't that beautiful? And once this barrel is polished up, that will be even more lustrous. Lustrous? Whatever the word is. Now we need our vac extractor tool. And we put that on the pump, lock it down, and then we're going to put a little silicone oil just on the edge of that cuff so it doesn't twist when I insert it in the barrel. We don't want it to twist up. And while I'm here, I'm going to put a little drop of silicone oil on those threads too, just so that it installs correctly. So we want to get that cuff past the lip first. There it is. And I'm just going to run it back and forth, get that silicone grease all over those threads. Travels smoothly. If I feel any catches or it gets tight at all while I'm tightening it down, then I back off, because you don't want to split that celluloid barrel, and then you're hooped. So I'm just going to turn it hand tight, release the collet, and we should have a working diaphragm. And you'll see it working through that translucent barrel. And we'll go in with our inspection camera just to make sure it's not twisted. We take a look inside, pump the pump a couple of times, and we see it's working correctly. Now we can put the blind cap back on, and we can reinstall the section. Add some silicone grease there as well. This should never be shellacked down, ever. The Parker Vacumatics were never shellacked down. There's enough threads there to keep any ink from leaking, but I put silicone grease on it, and then the future owner can unscrew that section and clean out the barrel with a bulb syringe or whatever and keep this pen maintained. Now I need to polish up that feed right there so it's nice and shining just where it's visible. It's pretty clean. I've checked the breather hole there. We've got the breather tube clean, and that passage is all clean and ready to go, and then we can reinstall the nib. Okay, so I've polished up that feed ebonite so that it is nice and shiny and all the visible sides. We've got our shiny nib ready to go. When I polished up the feed, I took the Dremel buffer to the section as well to make it nice and beautiful and clean. So now we can put this back together again, or make these Franken parts come together again. The nib still looks aligned. Get some rubber gripper material and squeeze it top and bottom and search for the sweet spot. I put it back in the barrel so I've got more leverage to push this nib and feed in. So the feed went in a little bit deeper than the nib. I think I might pull this out of here and try the other feed in this section with this nib. No, what I did was I had the feed way too deep. It was extended about 1/8 of an inch. So I punched it out again, dropped the feed in so it's flush, and got the nib so that it is just slightly misaligned there, but the alignment on the nib itself is perfect. So there we go. Looks perfect. Put the clean breather tube back in, put it back in the barrel, and we should have a working pen. So let's dip test this nib and see whether it writes properly. So I'm going to change this up a little bit and use some Waterman's Inspired Blue, which is a beautiful turquoise and just as safe with latex diaphragms as Serenity Blue. And we'll give it a test and see what we have here. I'm not even going to give this a year because it's, well, let's give it both years. The pen is a 1940. The nib is a 1952 Parker Vacumatic, or should we call it a FrankenVac? I like that better. Let's check the wetness. Don't mind the bleed through. That was from my Aeroflex test of the Aeroflex nib that I did yesterday, and it really bled through even the Clairefontaine. But this is a nice wet pen, and it is smooth with a ton of feedback. Let's see some flex, and it's got a little bit of bounce to it. This would be, my guess, is an extra fine nib. And I'm just going to check the alignment here. Again, yeah, I could use a little bit of a tweak. So this needs some work. So I'm going to work on this nib off camera and try to align it a little bit better and then polish it with some micromesh. I think whenever it was dropped to bend that tine, the nib tipping got probably scratched, and so it needs to be smoothed out. So I've worked on the nib for about 15 minutes or so, working on the alignment. There was still a little bit of a wow in there, which was causing the tines to not go together exactly squarely. So I got them absolutely perfectly aligned, and I went through micromesh from 6000 grit to 8,000 to 12,000, doing figure eights and so forth. And I think I've got it writing now. Very wet, very fine. This is a fine nib, but it is now beautifully smooth and at an extra fine, probably about 0.3, 0.4. I haven't measured it yet. We'll measure those lines. I bet you it's 0.3 millimeters. And it's writing beautifully. There we go. So, now that I've got the nib working fairly reasonably, I can go ahead and polish up the barrel and the cap, when the cap is still soaking in the pen flesh right now. And I'll do that by going through the micro mesh from 1500 grit to 12,000 grit, and then finish off with my Dremel tool and some polishing compound. And my polishing compound of choice is Meguiar's Mirror Glaze 9 Professional Swirl Remover 2. It's an automotive polish that has no silicone in it. Over the years I've used it on guitars with nitrocellulose finishes like my Martin and my Gibson, and it works beautifully, and it works perfectly on these celluloid surfaces as well. One thing I'm going to have to use 400 grit on is that cap groove that has been carved into the celluloid from years and years of capping and uncapping the pen. So I'll sand that down with some 400 grit, and then we'll go at the rest with the micro mesh and the polish. And there we have the barrel all polished up and beautiful, and compare it to the cap. You can see all that wear is gone, and we'll do the cap next. I went through the micro mesh from 1500 grit to 12,000, and then finished off with some polishing compound on my buffer wheel, and even the end jewel is nicely polished. The cap is next, and here's the cap, all nice and shiny. Look at that. Hard to believe this was just a Franken part. I wasn't able to take the clip off, but I was able to polish around the clip and polish the clip itself. So let's put this pen back together again. Add a little bit of silicone oil to those barrel threads. And there we go. One complete Franken pen. Part Canadian, part American. But unlike our countries, working together now in harmony. Isn't that lovely? So let's see how much ink this pen will draw up. I'm actually going to use Serenity Blue for this one because the turquoise shows up on camera very poorly. First thing we want to do is get out the scale and weigh the pen. 9.88 grams. Press tare. There we go. Remove the blind cap. Put it on the scale. And we're going to pump 5 or 6 times. And we hear bubbles, which is good. And we put it back on the scale, and we get 1.42 milliliters of ink, which is pretty typical. That's good. Means the pump's working perfectly. And if you want to see how a Vacumatic pump works on the inside, how it siphons up ink, click up here for a video that I did using a Parker 51 Vacumatic demonstrator that I borrowed from Murray, and it shows how it sucks up colored water into the transparent barrel and how that siphon pump works. But now, let's see how this nib works. Vacumatic. Let's call this a FrankenVac. TM pending. And it's nice and smooth now. I would say this line, let's measure it here with my Dominant Industries, and yeah, it's what I expected. It's a 0.3 millimeters, 0.3 millimeters. Let's check the wetness. It's decently wet, and that is an extra fine. And this is a nice pen, posted, unposted. I tend to like to post these pens. It gives them a really nice balance, and I hold them up here on the barrel. One living pen from many dead parts.
It's alive! In the name of God! Now I know what it feels like to be God!
And I'll come back with my thoughts about this resurrection. So what are my thoughts about this pen restoration? Well, this isn't a restoration so much as it's maybe a reclamation, a rejuvenation, certainly a resurrection from dead body parts. And I was really pleased with this because it's like making something out of nothing. Because I had two pens that were basically worthless, and I combined parts and made it a beautiful everyday writing fountain pen. The barrel has lovely translucence. You can see the Vacumatic pump right there, and that's full of ink. It's a double jewel, which I really like, and it has a beautiful 14 karat gold nib that was gnarly and broken and bent, and now writes a beautiful extra fine line that's wet and juicy. And it's in this classic black that just looks gorgeous either on your desk or in your shirt pocket. Those Parker arrows were very highly sought after, so much so that when the Parker 51 became so popular, people bought just the caps so they could put a cap in the pocket of their shirt to make it look like they had a Parker in their pocket. So, do you have a Parker in your pocket? I'd be pleased if you had this Parker in your pocket, because I'm going to sell this pen for $150 US plus shipping. And if you're interested in purchasing it, just send me a line at inkquiringminds@gmail.com with your name and your address, and I'll get you a shipping quote. Shipping to North America is about $10 these days, and you'll have a beautiful working pen, albeit from various parts. So you can say that the section, the barrel, and the pump are all from the US. The nib and the cap are from Canada. So it's a nice blend of Canadian American. And there you have it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. And you can join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month, and I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comment section, and you'll get cool emojis, badges, sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as instant access to my videos the moment I post them. And that just leaves it for me to say thank you for watching. And that's all she wrote.
I made this.